Guys, what's the worst way a girl handled your rejection? Story 1. When I was in high school, a girl I had started hanging out with was texting and asked me out over text. I was trying to think of the best way to let her down, and she was getting impatient. So, basically, I told her that I liked being friends and didn't want to be anything more than that, and that I didn't want to date while I was in high school because I didn't have a lot of time for dating between school, work, and my MMA classes. Plus, I lived out of town and didn't have a car. She sent me a text that just said, no. I didn't respond after that. She stalked me for a while and tried to make me jealous, even going as far as getting herself pregnant. Story 2. That was a bit of a double-edged sword. Two girls in college, different times. The first one had a crush on me and her ex, and I helped her through everything. I wasn't opposed to having a relationship but never pushed for it. She made it her goal to make me feel as jealous as possible around other guys. Maybe a year later, she'd finally asked me over to spend the night with her. I was a little baked, and after the weird experience, she passed out and started snoring. I felt weird lying in bed stoned and awake, so I decided to leave. The next day, she texted me angrily as expected and ignored me for a few weeks. Maybe a month later, she posted a picture of an ultrasound and tagged me in it. She messaged me back a few hours later, saying it was a joke, and her mom called her crying. That's what she told me. The second girl had BPD, but was calm and interesting enough to pursue. She asked me to go to clubs and bars with her, then made out with other guys while I was there, even though she said we were kind of dating. Whenever she wanted away from a particular guy, she would come find me and start making out with me. I still gave her the benefit of the doubt for 2 months until she straight up made me catch her with her ex. These are two girls who both wanted to date me and made elaborate schemes to exact some sort of revenge on me. I've stayed away from those types for years now. Story 3. I broke up with this girl and she didn't want to. She tried to talk me out of it and then tried to violate me by pinning me down, being bigger and stronger. I just stood up and dumped her on the floor one time. Later, her other ex, my best friend, was visiting and she came over. Things seemed to be going okay, and then all of a sudden, she leaped up in the air and tried to come down on my chest with her knees like some kind of wrestling move. I was so mad I literally threw her out of my front door and told her to get out of my life. Turns out she was jealous of our friendship. I don't think I ever saw her again. For the record, it was good, but you know what they say. Story 4. I rejected a girl I barely knew, and she then started screaming she was going to take her own life if we weren't together. I felt bad for her, but pro tip for you ladies that think this is a winning strategy. It kind of makes people want to date you less. She proceeded to get on the ground and writhe around, saying she was having a panic attack and could die from it. I almost laughed at how fake it all was. She gently sat down during her fall, then positioned herself carefully and then stopped moving. But a group of people came by and rescued her. We were outside of campus. She went to the hospital, and obviously, the doctors found there was nothing wrong with her, but she claimed that they just couldn't spot it. She started spreading the word about how she nearly died from the cruelty throughout her. Now she was dying in the streets from a severe panic attack. I just cruelly laughed and walked away. Don't think a lot of people bought her story, but I never really saw her again, so it just kind of disappeared on its own. Story 5. I had a brief relationship with a girl who faked a pregnancy and intended to keep the kid. We had always practiced safe sex with condoms, but after her false pregnancy claim, I was extremely stressed. She continued to stall and never provided any evidence beyond her word. I even contemplated getting legal advice for potential child support. Eventually, she disappeared without providing any proof of the pregnancy. Story 6. We dated a few times, and I decided that we weren't compatible for a long-term relationship. When I broke the news, she had an emotional outburst, crying uncontrollably, and demanding to know what she did wrong. The situation got so uncomfortable that people started looking over at us. Story 7. In high school, a girl I rejected stalked me and attempted to burn my pickup truck to the ground in retaliation. She was arrested for arson, but I didn't lay any charges against her. Story 8. She stalked me for 19 months, tried to hit me with a car, wrote my mom a letter and signed it in her blood, wrote me a letter and did the same thing, and told all my friends I violated her. A few of them actually believed her, which just mystified me. On the positive side, I'd learned how to get a restraining order, a gun permit, and a concealed carry permit. I even learned you can get them at the same office from people who work at desks right next to each other. Pro tip: when they ask you why you need a restraining order and a gun permit, don't say, Because if one doesn't work, the other will. They have no sense of humor in that office. I would have found that funny. Story 9. A girl asked me to prom, and I told her I wasn't planning on going because I wasn't interested. I told her I had to work anyway and asked for a few days to change my work schedule so I could go. I politely declined and she understood. This was the scariest one yet. Story 10. They broke down in tears. For the next 3 years, I was bullied by those 2 years older than me in high school. I was too naive to know how to handle an attractive 15-year-old. I was 13 at the time. Coming up to me and giggling with a friend, I thought it was being made fun of again. Story 11. Pulled a knife on me, like a kitchen knife, in the middle of the school. I feared for my life. She swung at me a few times and missed. Then she started hurting herself before the teachers apprehended her. She was screaming all the while as well. People wonder why I don't like the Doki Doki Literature Club. Story 12. My ex-wife started acting shady, sneaking out of the house to make phone calls, hiding incoming calls, and not telling who was calling. In the middle of the night, even though I asked nicely, she was also a mean drunk and had started drinking excessively overnight. She started to be physical, throwing stuff at my head, including a large rock, kicking and punching when she got angry. This is where I drew the line. One night, she went off the rails again in front of her small children, and I just knew that I could no longer live like that. I left and never looked back. She blew up my phone for the next couple of weeks, at least 60 text messages a day in the work cell, all hateful and vile. I tried to call her a couple of times and offered to talk about how we could best separate our finances and things to try to move on amicably, but she just screamed and accused me of cheating. She threatened to file a false police report for harming her 4-year-old son, and she didn't specify whether the allegation would be physical or sexual in nature. I cut off all contact and filed a police report for insurance reasons, and also for a restraining order. She knew this would hurt me the most. All said and done, $7,000 in property damage and another $1,500 in stolen property. I filed for a divorce, and she had obviously gone crazy and was capable of anything. The police didn't give two shits, but I didn't press charges. Story 13. So originally, my ex-girlfriend broke up with me. She was 25 at the time. I said, okay, cool, I'll move out at the end of finals about 2 weeks. She left for a few days to hang out with her friends. I decided to move all my stuff out while she was gone, except for some clothes, my bed, and my laptop. She came back, noticed everything of mine was gone, and started flipping out. I thought she wanted me out. She probably wanted me to beg to stay together. She kicked the trash can, screamed a bit, cried, and started pouting and stomping around the room. Then she lay on the floor, pounding her hands and feet into the ground like a child. It's exactly how it sounds. Of course, I started laughing because I didn't know what the hell was going on, and this was ridiculous. Eventually, I found a place to move out. She would call me and talk a bit, then start yelling we're getting upset. I would warn her that if she couldn't talk like an adult, I would hang up on her. She hated that. Of course, she didn't stop, so click, I hung up on her again. Well, this would go on for a bit before I got bored and stopped answering. Eventually, this happened again, where she would call, and I would end up hanging up on her. She called again and told me she was coming over. Now, I never told her where my new place was, but she knew the general area. I quickly parked my car in the garage and went back to playing video games. She called me and told me she's outside and I should come out. Luckily, she was down the road at some other house. I told her she's crazy and needs to seek professional help. So, what does she do, you ask? She decides to push her car horn for a good 15 minutes at 10 p.m. in a residential neighborhood, all the while telling me in a frustrated, childlike voice that I need to come outside. Of course, I'm not going to do that. I tell her. Story 14. Met some friends at a bar event. A friend had a girl who was beyond drunk with him. Friends mentioned going back to their place. I decided to buy a burrito and go home. The girl insisted I come with him, but I respectfully declined. She demanded I come with her and asked for a goodnight kiss if I wasn't going to come with her. I declined again, and she went insane. She started shrieking obscenities at me, trying to slap me. My friends tried to calm her down, but she kept going. I walked out through the kitchen because I worked there. Story 15. Dated a girl from work. After a few dates, I didn't see it going much further. I ended it. The girl pretty much spread around that we did the deed at work, which cost me any kind of promotion or horizontal move off what I was doing. So I ended up changing jobs about 12 months later after every application for promotion was given to someone else. Despite myself having a lot more experience and know-how with what we did prior to that, I was being moved around from project to project. Afterward, I just went back to permanent nights. The girl went on to get pregnant about 6 months later by someone else from work. Listen, don't dip your wick in Company Incorporated, my aunt once told me. Don't find your honey where you make your money. This story confirms it. Story 16. She got engaged to make me realize that she was my one true love, then threatened to take her own life if I didn't elope with her. A girl who I saw just as a friend that had never flirted with me started dropping really obvious, "I'm in love with you" things and texts. I told her I wasn't interested in that way, but she kept pushing until I told her I was dating someone. I wasn't, and she sent me a really angry text message and disappeared. She started dating someone and got engaged, so I thought I was home free until she messaged me the night before her wedding. Basically, she said she just started dating the other guy to make me realize how much I loved her and wanted me to save her from a marriage to this awful man. I told her no. Then she said that she just swallowed a bottle of pills and wouldn't go to the hospital unless it was on the way to Vegas to elope. I called a mutual friend and told him what had happened and proceeded to block the crazy girl on everything. Turns out she hadn't actually swallowed a bottle of pills, she was just being crazy. Story 17. A girl had me all over, and when I rejected her, she smelled me inappropriately, touched me, tried to dance with me many times after I declined, and told me how dirty she was. Then, after copying my boss, she said, "Stop being a wimp," because I kept ignoring her. Weirdest person I've ever met. She later broke some stuff in the women's restroom and walked home several miles alone on foot at 4 a.m. without telling her friends.